Sure, that's good.
So hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining this interview with Ahana. And Ahana is gonna be the part of our series with UK-based entrepreneurs. Ahana, such a pleasure having you today, and I always enjoy talking to ladies who do an entrepreneurship. I think it's the best. So. Tell me more about how do you feel being a woman and being entrepreneur. Do you see like people behave around you differently because you're a woman, or there is no any difference?
Yeah, so I think I'm in an interesting position. A lot of the things that I'm involved in, I tend to be the only woman. So, I study a physics degree and there's not that many girls on board. I play esports and I'm the only girl on my team. I mean, I'm into rock music. So I think a lot of the things that I've done in my life, I've almost become used to being the only woman in the room. And so in terms of being in entrepreneurship, particularly in the tech space, again, you don't see as many women. But I do think that given the fact that I've had so many experiences in that position, I'm now able to kind of maneuver it in a way that works for me. And I do think there are differences in how men and women are treated and seen. But what you can do is kind of just establish how you want to take charge of that. And, there's sort of subtleties that come into it. And I think people say that women think 100 times before speaking and men sort of tend to speak before thinking. And I think just being very self-assured and going in knowing that you are dealing with people who might think slightly differently or behave slightly differently, and just trying to be conscious of it really helps. But in terms of, how people are treated in this space, I do think there is a real push for more diversity, more women, more people from ethnic minorities. And I think it is definitely moving in the right direction. And slowly we are seeing more and more women in these spaces. And I think it's looking very positive for the future.
Thanks God. Just this morning, I had an interview with two ladies, Lindsay and Lindsay, from from the company 50/50, and they do consulting for other companies on inclusivity and how to bring diversity, how to do business in a diverse way, how to improve all these areas in the corporations. And I had such a blast, honestly, talking about issues like company have with inclusivity. So it's not only, what I was really surprised to hear, that it's not about recruitment. So in my mind it was like, just recruit like 50/50, will be fine. But it's more complicated issue. It's more, you need to see the inclusivity in a more holistic way. So it's not about just basically employing women. It's about on which position you're like, which positions are available for women. So, and not only for women, it's about all different traits people have, like with differences. So yeah, it was really interesting interview, and I'm happy kind of to follow up with you as well on this topic. I remember we had like event for entrepreneurs in Glasgow, and like a few entrepreneurs were presenting, and among like 10 people who were presenting, it was just one lady. And I was like, and I came to their organizer and I said like, thank you for organizing the event. It was like awesome, great, but why just one lady? And he was like, yeah, I agree. It's like, it's what we need to work on more and stuff. And I was like, at least people understand that there is something to work on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, but we're getting there. So I agree with you. Yes. We're getting there. I'm very happy about it. So where are you based?
So I'm in London at the moment. So I'm actually still a student. I'm in my final year of university. I study physics at Imperial. So currently all locked down in my university flat.
Oh my, how's it with lockdown and being a student? It should be so different.
Yeah, I think it is. Having said that, in a way, I think it's allowed for a lot more focus. And you know, it's absolutely, with something like lockdown, it's very dependent on the house you're in, the people you're with, and that makes a huge difference. And I'm very lucky to be, you know, in a place with my friends. I live with university friends, and there's so much stuff keeping me busy that it's almost, you know, it's almost easier in a way, being able to just kind of sit down in the day and focus on trying to get as much done. And in fact, I think even with the degree, in terms of meetings with professors and with the startup, meeting people, doing sort of customer discovery interviews, in a way, I think the lockdown and, you know, has facilitated access to those meetings in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because now you don't have to schedule the same amount of time to go see people in person. And
Yeah.
of course, you're missing that personal sort of one-to-one feel. But I do think there are some ways that you can try and sort of at least take some positives out of what is a pretty terrible situation.
Yeah, I admire your way of thinking in this on the lockdown situation. I think it's such a great way to kind of tackle the current situation we have and problems we face. It's like as I remember, you start your startup during the lockdown.
That's right.
It's is it like because the idea came from the need, or you had this idea before and you just kind of like finally had time to work on it?
Yeah, so I think it was a mixture of things. I've always been interested in a lot of different things. So throughout university, I've done sort of tech internships. I just did a banking internship. I worked very closely with another early stage startup, and there were elements of all of these things that I enjoyed. And you know, through the degree, through speaking to friends at uni, I knew a couple people who were also vaguely interested in doing something. And really, what I would say is that I have always liked to get involved in a lot of different things. And my worry about my final year is that societies at university wouldn't happen. So I thought, okay, I need to find myself a way to keep myself occupied aside from physics. Otherwise, I will go insane if I'm only doing my degree. And so I really just rung up a couple of my friends, and I said, hey, like, do you want to do something together over the summer? We can just work on a project and see what happens. And it was one of my co-founders who just done an exchange program at MIT. And he'd taken an entrepreneurship class in which the textbook they use is kind of like a 24-step guide to building a
Oh,
startup. Step
okay.
one is brainstorming. It's an excellent book. It's called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. You know,
Oh, I fun.
yeah, so I mean, as physicists, we love discipline and we love textbooks even more. So this was an ideal situation for us. And step one was to brainstorm. I think it was 100 ideas. So we just sat together and chatting away, having great fun. Most of our ideas were absolutely horrific, embarrassing things that would not help anybody. Um, but what was funny is then I think we had one or two decent ideas, but because we'd spent so long chatting and none of us had been writing anything down, we thought, okay, we need to start being structured. We need a scribe. And it was when nobody volunteered to be the notes taker, we thought, this is an interesting space we could tackle, because clearly this is something that we don't want to do. You know, can we fix this? And that's when we got looking into sort of what technologies were out there in terms of that could assist you with note taking. So there's a couple of things that do transcription really, really well, but there isn't much on the market that will give you a proper minutes type summary. And that's really what we're trying to do with Quill.
That's a very interesting idea. Could you explain on which stage you are and what technology is behind Quill?
Sure. So we are early stage. So we really started working on it in about August of this year, of 2020. We're currently in the stage that we have a working prototype. So what it does is you can speak into it. It will give you a real-time transcript and it will pull keywords out. So that's a sort of base layer, the base level product we have, and it's working well for sort of our very preliminary customer testing. But you know what our vision for it is. So the next step is to get action points out of meetings. You know, given our customer discovery, that is one of the key things people look for. And so we're sort of building some machine learning algorithms to facilitate that aspect of it. And then, long term, our vision for Quill is really just to integrate it into the entire meeting workflow. So that's from the minute you send your colleague a message on Slack saying, hey, let's talk about this later. Quill will help with the calendar invite, it will help with the agenda, it will sit in the meeting, it will give you notes, and afterwards it will give you a data insights dashboard that you can kind of look at some really interesting metrics. And one of those is actually related to diversity. And as a female co-founder in this space, it's something that I was particularly passionate about, and something that came up over and over again in the various different programs that I'd been involved in, was sort of the dynamics between women in meetings. And I think there are a lot of, it's a very complicated problem, and I think it's much larger than just business meetings. It's reflective of society in general, but there are sort of small things you can do with the data from meetings. So an example being, as you mentioned, some companies' solution to sort of fixing this imbalance is to hire 50-50. But you're right, then in a meeting, that doesn't, or in the workplace, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an inclusive environment and the women feel comfortable to express themselves, or perhaps they're getting more work assigned and actually not progressing their careers as quickly. But if you have access to meeting data, what you can start to look at are metrics like idea generation. You can see who is the one actually coming up with things, who is the one speaking for X amount of time, who is actually getting the most action points per meeting. And once you start tracking this quantitatively, you can start to actually pull some really interesting insights out to tangibly make the workplace a more inclusive environment, rather than it being subjective as it currently is, just based on sort of colleagues and manager feedback in a meeting, where kind of reviewing employees isn't really at the top of the agenda, it's just the work. So I think there's a really lot of interesting parts to the project, and we're at a very, very early stage, but we've got a lot of things in the pipeline coming up.
Like Ahana, to be honest, I think it's a great idea. And it's fascinating how this idea came up from just brainstorming session. I mean, wow, it's really great. And not even, it didn't come up other idea like during the brainstorming, it's come up during the lack of technology and lack of help of taking notes. I think it's great. And for example, I have a lot of meetings with employees, with like team members, and it will be great to have this technology just installed in my laptop, and it would track us and help us kind of just put all the information we producing basically during the meetings into something quantifiable, let's say. That's great. If you already have a minimal viable product, which is basically your testing prototype are you already looking into investments, or what is your kind of idea for future steps?
Sure. So we are a fully technical founding team, which kind of gives us the luxury that we are able to build it ourselves as a founding team. And, my CTO is an incredibly strong developer. I think I feel so lucky to have the team that I do. And so we've had a lot of sort of discussions as a team and thoughts about the investment strategy. And for us, sort of something big coming up for us is an interview with Y Combinator, and part of that program is to get investment. And so, of course, that would be an incredible opportunity, not just from the investment standpoint, but also just from the experience, the branding, and the mentorship. But so our initial priority is to get to that interview. So that's in early December. And what we're doing to prepare for that is really just sort of speaking to customers all day and coding all night. That's really kind of number one of our list of things to do. But after that point, it could go either way. We will still be looking for funding after that. And that will primarily be for certain expertise that we don't have as a team. So things like UX design, that's such an important part of any software, and it's not something as a team we've got past experience with. So most likely we will be doing a funding round perhaps in December or early 2021, primarily just to fill these sort of gaps in the team. So things like UX, as I mentioned, and also some of the more standard tasks like integrations with other technologies. That's been done many times before, and it wouldn't be too intense or expensive to do.
So why Combinator? You mentioned it's a program which runs in California in USA. So you're considering to move to USA at some point?
Well, not exactly. So this will be a virtual Y Combinator. So they've actually done one virtually this summer. It was their first ever virtual kind of experience. So we will be in London for the whole program if we do get selected. I mean, long term, you know, I think it's still too early to say what could happen or where exactly we'll be. But unfortunately, we won't be going out to the sunny San Francisco for this batch if it does work out.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a bit sad at one point, but at another one, not really, because you know, sometimes I think Y Combinator is a great place to kind of get a boost for your startup, but it's not always available for people, for example, who are based in London, who are based in whenever we're based are, basically, because moving, and it's such a big commitment. It's, you need to move families and kids, if you have kids, you know, and now it's like virtual and you can just do it. You can have all the help, but without such a big commitment in terms of moving countries. I think it's great. So
yeah.
good luck with Y Combinator.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know personally a few companies who were there, and it's great. Do you know about 500 startups?
I'm not aware of that, no.
It's another big thing in California in terms of entrepreneurship. So,
Great.
yeah, so many options down there. Yeah, but they're based in UK, and we were blessed in Scotland because in Scotland we have such a great support for entrepreneurship, and our company NoFrames was basically started, nurtured by our universities. University of Strathclyde, and without their help, I don't think we would be where we are at the moment. So what about your university? Does it provide this kind of environment for nurturing ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So Imperial has an enterprise lab in which they offer a whole load of sort of really great opportunities and experiences. So they've got sort of experts in residence, and you can book meetings with experts in, you know, from things like law to IP to business coaching in general. So there's really good resources available there. They also run a couple of competitions throughout the year for students in which certain grants are available, which is again really great. And yeah, I think more than that, there's also just a great community. So there's a Slack page where everyone sort of collaborates and communicates. And just through that in itself, we've been able to speak to XYZ startups that have come out of Imperial. And I think in the UK, there's not as much of a push for entrepreneurship as there is in the US. I mean, when my co-founder returned from MIT, I think there, you know, he came back all wide-eyed, and there was just so much opportunity. And I think just the you know, the whole American dream, I guess, it's just something much more commonly done out there. And I think that the UK isn't quite at that stage yet, but it's definitely, again, it's moving in that direction. I think a lot of universities now do have support for this. We also have an Imperial Entrepreneurs Society, in which I think they've partnered up with UCL for an accelerator program. So there's definitely some really good opportunities available to get involved in the startup space if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, I think it's such great that now, like, all the students have so many opportunities to try different things, and even you have is it like your main topic is physics, and now you're doing completely different thing. Basically, you're doing entrepreneurship, which is, for example, before only people with business degree would consider to do. And now we have all these great minds, but like very structured, logical physics minds coming to entrepreneurship and helping like our society, our future, like shape our future. I think it's such a great environment we have at the moment. I'm very happy about it. is it difficult to tackle at the same time personal life, friends, family, business, and studies?
I think it's a challenge, but it's one that I enjoy, and I think that's how I've always been personally. I really like having a lot of different aspects, and of course it's challenging to manage, but it's absolutely possible. And again, I think I'm so lucky to be in an environment in which kind of the people around me are also just almost like I look up to a lot of my peers in the way that they operate and can also just juggle so many things. And so I've always tried to kind of take that and try and channel it in my own behavior and try and, in a sense, compartmentalize, make sure I've made time for each thing. But also at the end of the day, it's all part of me and my personality. And so also, I talk to my family about my startup. My co-founders have met my parents, and I'm friends with my co-founders. Yeah, I mean, I think I speak to them more than my parents now. So I think it can be challenging to manage everything, and of course there's times where it is difficult, but overall I'm very happy with kind of the balance of personal life and work life and university.
In terms of startup, so you're on your last year in university. Is it bachelor or master's?
So I'm on an integrated master's program, so it's a 4-year degree.
So it's basically master's. And
yeah.
Like what people usually do after masters, or they going to do some internships, get some experience, something like that. You're already a business owner. So
yes.
how's it to be a business owner and being like while you're so young and your journey as an adult just begun?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting experience. And what I would say is that, when I started my degree, I thought I wanted to be a physicist. So I had dreams of going to the moon, so doing a physics degree, then working at the European Space Agency. And that was really the career that I wanted. And my personal tutor at Imperial, he does exactly that. So he works with the European Space Agency, and he's does some really incredible work. But what I found throughout, over the course of the degree, is that I also had other skills that I didn't feel I was able to, use to the same extent by pursuing a career in academia. And, I think that goes back to school. I did the IB, I'd moved internationally, and I think I wanted a more holistic experience. So very early on in my degree, I started looking at kind of what opportunities were available from a career perspective. And in my first year, I did a technology internship. In my second year, I did a technology internship. There's sort of so many internships now. They do them in spring, they do them in summer. So I've done a couple. Basically, I've explored tech, I've explored finance and banking, and I've really enjoyed both. I think there's elements to both that I particularly like. And for me, this startup, as I said, it started as something just to do on the side and something that would keep me busy on top of uni work. But now I'm really enjoying it, and I think it's still too early to see where things could go. And so I haven't fully decided what will happen. I'm still, I think the big thing is really YC. I think that could be a turning point for us. But until then, I'm just trying to get as many experiences as I can and kind of give everything as much effort and sort of grit as I possibly can, and just sort of go with the flow to some extent and see how things work out.
That's a very, very, I think, mature way of thinking. This is great. And such a pleasure talking to such a young woman, but already full of achievements. Ahana, I'm going to move us to the second part of the interview, which is very short, and I would ask you to answer as short as possible. 1-2 words, maybe sentence. And sure. I'm going to ask some questions. Sure. So my first question is, what is the most important in life?
Relationships.
Nice. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I think being happy with my life.
Which is good, right?
Yes,
it's a
better
good
than being
goal.
sad.
Okay. Do you have entrepreneurs in your family?
No, I don't.
That's very interesting. It's my third interview this week where people say they don't have entrepreneurs in their families. It's really interesting because usually some statistics, I do quite a lot of interviews. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and 90% of them usually say that they have entrepreneurs in the family. So
Okay.
yeah, it's very interesting. I personally have entrepreneurial family. My co-founder has entrepreneurial family. So, you know, it's usually runs in the family. And if you're doing entrepreneurship and you don't have entrepreneurs in your family, it says a lot about your character, your personality, and your just, you know, creativity and courage, which is exciting.
Thank you.
I mean, I was prepared by my family basically when I was a kid, seeing my parents being entrepreneurs, and you haven't, and you're still doing it, and it takes a lot of courage to do it. Would you love to travel, and what country you would choose for future?
Yeah, so I mean, I know it's meant to be a short answer, but I actually lived internationally growing up. So I lived in the UK, in India, and in Singapore. I think the country that I really want to see that I haven't is Japan.
Oh,
Just because I think it's very futuristic. I think the culture is very interesting and rich. And yeah, I love the food, so I really want to visit.
I love sushi as well. About Singapore, it's really interesting. So, what age you've been there?
Yeah, so I lived in Singapore from the ages of 16 to 18, so sort of my last 2
Wow,
years of
that's
school.
exciting. But
Yeah.
it's supposed to be very futuristic as well, right?
Yeah, I think Singapore again was an incredible experience. And I think it was even more contrasted because I just lived in India for 2 years before. And I think the countries are like chalk and cheese. They're so different. But yeah, I think it's an incredibly kind of safe, clean, very sort of easy place to live and very pleasant. Yeah.
Exciting. Okay, thank you, Ahana, so much. And the last question, if people will be interested to know more about your startup, to just contact with you personally, how they could do it?
Yeah, sure. So on our website, quill.fyi, we have a contact us page. But otherwise, I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me on my LinkedIn.
So how we can find you on LinkedIn?
So it's just my name, Ahana Banerjee. I think I'm not sure what my like handle or anything is, but if you search my name, you'll be able to find me.
Perfect. And I'm so grateful for you to join today. It was completely amazing, and I wish the best for the Quill. I think it's gonna have amazing future, and I personally would install it as soon as possible. To be honest, I need it. I need it in my life. I need help. And
Well,
I like the automation, and that's I don't know other programs or technology which would do it for me. Only if I have an assistant or one of our team members would do it, or I personally would do it. So it's a lot of work. So good luck with that. We need it. And guys, please keep in touch with us for follow interviews with the UK best entrepreneurs, and please follow Ahana's social media, contact her on LinkedIn, or check Quill website. Thank you. Stay in touch.
thanks, Anna.
Wait.